Today we are going to be talking about printmaking and radial designs. So I'll go over how to make a radial design block print with our styrofoam right here, and then I'll go over the basics of printmaking and how to get that started. So first, with our radial block print, what we're going to be doing is taking a styrofoam square, and we are going to be doing a simple design on here that's going to be repeated 4 different times in a radial pattern. So it's kind of like we have a corner right here in the radial pattern. It's going to be going all the way around in a circle. So kind of like a snowflake or a pie or a pizza or something like that. It's the same thing going in a circle, not like a checkerboard of step by step by step by step by step. Okay? So an example of this that I have already done right here, you can see there's some red or black ink on there. And my design is pretty simple with some straight lines and some circles and some curved lines. When I print this down, it will look something like this. Okay, so this should be a good example of how it is printed in a radial pattern. Oops. And you can see how the middle part here is always in the middle. Okay. Now, the interesting part, what we are going to be doing, we're going to do it both different ways. So if I flip this around and have this in the middle, you'll have a completely different print or a completely different design, all from the same block. Okay. So this is what we are going to be doing. You're going to create the one block, and we're going to print it 2 different ways. One corner in the middle, and then the other corner is going to be on the outside. Okay, and as we're going to flip it, and it's going to create a whole new different design. To get started with this, trace out several squares on a piece of paper to kind of get an idea of what size you're going to do. It's a lot easier to sketch out different ideas and designs on paper rather on here. When you are ready to start drawing your design onto your styrofoam plate, use a blunt pencil or a mechanical pencil with the lid poked in, okay? You want these lines to be thick enough that the ink is not going to go inside the little crevices that you are carving. Now, here is a good design, and here is a not so good design. The reason why this is not a good design is because it's simple and the lines don't match up. If we are going to be doing a radial design, your corners are going to have to match up. So wherever one end stops, the other side needs to start at the exact same place. A good example of this is this design that a student has made with their radial designs. So with their block, in the middle right here, you can see it creates a whole flower. If you block that out, it was just 1/4 of that flower. You see that? Put together, and all the edges are lined up. You can see in our outside corners, they started doing kind of like a spider web design. When that was put together, you can tell that the edges were not lined up and they weren't measured, and the design is kind of wonky looking. We want these edges to be lined up so that when it's put all together, it matches. Okay. Easy way to do that and make sure all your edges match is just simply measuring. Okay. On this extra block right here, to measure, since this is 4 inches, I'm just going to put a dot every inch. Okay. I'm going to do that all the way around my block as just a helpful guideline. Makes things so much easier. I'm going to do that on my block as well. Now, wherever you mark on your block, it's going to show up in your print. So do this super tiny and not very obvious, but obvious enough that you see it. Just a helpful reminder that I hand cut these blocks, so they may not be exactly 4 inches across. They may be a little bit off. Okay, so this is your bad design, and you can tell that when the lines are drawn, they're not going to match up on either side. And that can be easily seen by, say, this first little square right here. So it's a little short of 1.5 inches. When you go over here, it is under 1 inch, okay? So they're not going to match up. It's going to be really wonky looking, and we don't want that. Also, when this design is flipped, so you have an arrow going outwards, when it's flipped, it's going to go inwards, and that's not much of a big design change, okay? You want a big design change. You want each design to look like something completely different, not just arrows going in and then arrows going out. That's not enough. This one right here is a little bit better design, okay? So in each corner, it's a little bit different. This corner, there's more of a flower, and then this corner is a leaf. This corner is okay because I'm not going to be putting these right in the middle, and they're the same. I also measured, just like how I did right here, of the 1, 2, 3 inch dots to make sure that my lines are going to be matching up, so that when I put it all together, the lines are going to match up and not look like disordered or anything like that. When I start sketching out on our slides, I have some examples to show you guys of what to do, what not to do, and some things to get inspiration from. I'm going to go ahead and draw out a simple design right here of just some lines and maybe some dots, and then I'm going to try it out and print it. All right, so here's my simple design. I need to line these up a little bit better once I get over here. So over here, I have my little dots that I made on here, and then I'm going to use my blunt pencil end to draw into my styrofoam. Now, I don't want to jab my pencil into the styrofoam and make holes in it, but you want it deep enough and thick enough that the ink is not going to seep into the lines, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and draw this on here. All right, so I did my print. I kind of messed up. I went opposite of this with my lines, but that's okay. We're going to see what happens. Now that I went over it twice and just pressed down a little bit harder, making sure all my lines are nice and thick and that the ink is not going to press into them. I forgot to mention, you don't want really large areas carved away or the ink is going to get in those anyway. So you got to find your happy medium of your thicker lines, but they're still small enough that the ink is not going to cover them all up. All right, so I'm going to take my sketch and my plate away, and then I'm going to do a little bit of the inking, and I'm going to show you how to do that. I'm going to come over here. So I have a flat plate to ink on, and the kind of edge is right here to help hold it all into place. This ink is sitting for a while, so kind of squish it up in here, mix up all the stuff in there. It's water-based, so it will wash out of clothes. You don't necessarily have to use a popsicle stick. I just like it to mix it up a little bit better and to kind of spread it along a little bit more. You can use a pencil, a stick, anything really. Okay, set that off to the side. Again, this is water-based, so it will wash out, but you never really know. Now, with these brayers and everything, when you wash them out, you can pop this in and out right here, and that's important because ink usually gets kind of like gunked up in this little area, so you got to wash it out, and then you're going to wash out this little nook and cranny right there, and you just pop it back in. So when you know you have enough ink, is that you'll start here it kind of be tacky. Here. You can see how the ink is pulling a little bit, and that's a good amount. All right. I'm going to put down some paper so I don't get my table all dirty. Any paper is fine. I'm going to ink my plate. Make sure it's nice and covered. Set this down. You can see how my plate is all the way covered. It's not going into my nooks and crannies and things like that. Now, since it is styrofoam, you're going to have a little bit of those styrofoam showing, and that's okay because it's not going to be completely solid. That's just the nature of the styrofoam. Now with my paper, now remember, I'm going to be doing a radial design. So I'm going to keep my middle part in the middle, and then I'm going to flip it over and just keep track of where it is. And I'll lay it down. Don't shift it or shimmy it once you lay it down. So you're going to pat it. Just use the pads of your finger to softly press down the styrofoam to your paper. Now be careful of any little ink things on your fingers. You don't get it on your final paper, okay? Try to keep it clean. And if that means washing your hands between each one, then you need to do so. Make sure it's all done, and then you can peel it away. Ooh, that turned out kind of cool. Okay, so I'm going to repeat the process and go in a radial pattern. If ink is getting into your crevices, that's fine. Just rinse it out underneath the faucet to get it all clean, dry it off, and put the ink back on to do your radial design. Okay, I'm going to do this, and then I will come back once I'm done. Let's see. Ooh, okay. That looks pretty nice. I like this. It's kind of creepy. I like it. Okay, so you can cheat a little bit with this. Now, what you can do, see how it's like super patchy right here. You don't want that much patchiness, but this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to take a little Q-tip and I'm going to pat it, fingerprint, pat it right here. Just kind of fill it in. It's not going to be the same consistency as the rest, but sometimes it needs to be done. Okay, I didn't print that off all the way right here, but you get the idea. So this is one direction. I'm going to go ahead and do the opposite direction. All right, I'm about to take off my last one. Ooh. Okay, so here's this one. It's kind of like spidery to me. And here is the first one I did. Well, you can't see it. Hold on. Here are the two that I did right here. You can see that I just used one plate, and they both created completely different designs. This one has a very celestial kind of vibe to it, and this one looks like a spider type thing. And I was not going for a whole spider look, but that's what it kind of came out to be. A few things about it. Make sure that if it's starting to get really patchy, like it is right here and everything, add more ink to your plate. You need to add more ink to your plate so it's not as patchy. If your ink is starting to get into your little crevices and everything, like it was starting to do, so like over here and all that, wash out your plate, just rinse it out, and then dry it off, and you can continue using it. I want 2 prints done 4 times just like this, so 2 completely different prints done with the one block. Try your best to have your lines aligned and then your lines clean and a more solid print. So try your best not to have the patchiness, but you know, I showed you a cheat kind of thing with the Q-tip. All right, and then wash everything up. And once you have your prints, you don't need your plate anymore, and it'll only last so long because it is styrofoam. All right, happy printing.